Hey, good morning, friends. Today is Monday, February the 10th, 2025, and the time now is 9:10 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk briefly about the situation between South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, and the United States, Donald Trump, with Elon Musk in the middle of it all. So, about a week now, the United States President Donald Trump, and we all know that as of now, he had signed several executive orders, and one of which is basically sending chill throughout the world, throughout Africa and the rest of the world. And this happens to deal with the United States President Donald Trump cutting aid, USAID, from many countries and institutions around the world. This is in addition to Donald Trump removing the United States from the WHO, the World Health Organization, and other prominent international agreements. So, in terms of the USAID, many around the world are basically scrambling because apparently removing the aid, okay, or stopping aid from countries and institutions around the world is supposed to make things difficult for countries and institutions around the world. But I do personally think that it could be one of the best things that have happened to the rest of the world and to Africa. And I do believe it could backfire against the United States and Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is basically cutting aid from South Africa. And Donald Trump is citing the whole notion that South Africa is not being fair, or South African government is taking land away from white South Africa or white South Africans, and that there are other horrible things that are happening to white South Africans, to the point where Donald Trump is even plotting or ordering the relocation of white South Africans. Now, there is a problem with that. One being that I do believe that some white South Africans will travel to the United States, will relocate to the United States. But also, I do believe that the masses will not, especially for those in South Africa who do have privilege. This is because migrating to the United States, relocating to the United States for many white South Africans could mean starting all over again. It could mean that they do not have a country that they control, because whether you like it or not, white South Africans still control South African economy and all that. Relocating to the United States means that they have to start all over, and even though they are white, they're gonna have to contest white Americans. Also, many white South Africans are saying that they are not going to relocate. But should they relocate? Yes, it could mean an issue for the South African economy for a time being because they control everything. But I believe that it is not going to hurt South Africans and black South Africans in the long run. It is going to backfire against the United States and white South Africans should they choose to migrate to the United States. But, friends, looking at this all, during his first term, Donald Trump actually attacked South Africa the same way about this whole notion of white South Africans, quote unquote, being discriminated against, which it is a means to go at Africa and South Africa. However, friends, I'm going to say that whatever Donald Trump is doing could be one of these things, these actions that could unify South Africa and the rest of Africa, the rest of Black Africa, most especially against the conceptual West. Because he is stoking fire, he is lighting fire. Okay, Donald Trump is putting fuel on a fire that is already blazing. And this is because, friends, the rest of Africa is becoming agitated and irritated. And what Donald Trump is doing is putting fuel to the fire. Now, the whole idea of cutting aid to Africa and the rest of the world, and in this case, let's talk about Africa, could be one thing first. It means to separate Africans, okay, African leaders and countries, break them apart, and then deal with them individually, as they say, divide and conquer. And in this case, when Donald Trump ready to go at South Africa, okay, with the full might and scale of the United States, financially, economically, and so on, the rest of Africa would be or could be reluctant to support South Africa. That could be another strategy that Donald Trump and the United States are using. But then, when they are done with South Africa, when they go at the rest of Africa is going to be weak to protect, to support, to defend itself. So Africa needs to take a step back, observe, analyze what Trump is doing, and do not get trapped. Okay, do not fall for Donald Trump's nonsense. But the whole thing with Donald Trump going at South Africa, I am very happy that Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, basically had told Donald Trump to shut his mouth and the United States to back off, okay? Back itself off out of South Africa's business. And those words that he said in a tweet and in a couple of messages that the South African government released was harsh words, strong words for the United States and Donald Trump. But one thing that basically disturbed me is that after Donald Trump's attack on South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa basically called in Elon Musk and he told Elon Musk to basically solve the issue, to deal with Donald Trump. This is one of those instances where it shows, it demonstrates the weakness of Africa. As of now, there is no doubt that Donald Trump is a white supremacist, and we should all acknowledge that. It is interesting, my friends, that one white supremacist attacked an African country, and that African country calls on one of his sons, who is a white supremacist, to deal with the white supremacist who did the attack. So either way, it shows how the white supremacist and the white power apparatus is all over Africa. It is all on Africa, kneeling on African or Africa's neck. Okay? And this, my friends, is a metaphor for what happened to George Floyd, okay, where the police officer basically knelt on his neck until he passed out. Now, friends, in terms of the whole notion of Donald Trump, okay, the thing of Donald Trump cutting aid to Africa and the rest of the world, and in this case, I'm talking specifically about Africa, I do believe that it is not so bad or could not be so bad after all. And I do have a friend, a colleague of mine, who is an American, but his heritage is from the Congo, who basically was angry, okay, about the whole situation to the point where when I told him that it could be one of the best things to have happened to Africa, he was basically mad at me. I had to talk to this guy for about 15 minutes to try to make him understand. My friends, of course, a lot of people in the Congo and in Africa will die as a result of the United States President Donald Trump cutting aid to Africa and the rest of the world. And I do believe what Donald Trump did was a means to attack Africa. Let's not fail to consider the fact that Donald Trump could use the whole idea of cutting aid to Africa as a leverage to get Africa to turn against Russia, to get Africa to support Israel, okay, turn against the Palestinian or Gaza, to tweak Africa in a way as Donald Trump sees fit to support his agenda, whether we are talking about in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, and so on. My thing here is the United States and Western countries, and I do believe just in recent times, another country from Europe cut off aid to another African country. By cutting aid to the African countries and the rest of the world, I do believe the United States could feel the pain in the future because the United States has always used aid, financial, economic, military, or whatever aid as a leverage to basically have Africa, okay, to bend the knee. My thing here is by cutting aid, putting Africa in a situation where Africa doesn't receive aid, Africa will no longer have to listen to the United States and to the West. Also, by forcing Africa to be in a position where Africa will not receive aid from the United States and the West, perhaps it could force us, Africans, to begin to point fingers and humiliate African leaders, okay, forcing them to wake up, forcing them to begin to implement the right policies and forcing changes in Africa where the right people could come to power in Africa and implement the right policies. In this case, we are talking about policies that could be good for Africa, but not consider the might of the West, in this case, the United States as well, in a manner where the might of the West is basically giving prominence over the livelihood of the African people. So, as much as and as long as the United States and Donald Trump continues to attack Africa, which I do believe, cutting aid to Africa, cutting aid to South Africa, and going at South Africa, as much as it could make Donald Trump and the United States look strong and powerful, in the long term, the long run, I do believe it could backfire against the United States and Donald Trump. Because in this case, it put Africa in a position where Africa doesn't have to listen to the United States and Donald Trump because Africa needs and accept nothing from them. And it forces Africa and Africans to begin to press for the changes that Africa and Africans need. So this is the situation. This is my belief. Now, friends, I'm going to make a video in which I elaborate on my perspective on the possible consequences against the United States and benefit for Africa for Donald Trump or by Donald Trump cutting aid to Africa. And this can also be replicated throughout the entire world. Now, friends, I want to know what you think, so please tell me what you think. But once again, in the case of South Africa, I do believe that the South African government needs to be very careful because I do believe after South Africa took Israel to court and after the impressive activity, the demonstration of the South African lawyer to the rest of the world, the professionalism that they demonstrated to the rest of the world when they contested Israeli lawyer at the ICJ or ICC, however you want to say it. I do believe that Israel and the United States, in this case, a United States governed by Donald Trump, does have South Africa in mind, and they do have bad things in mind for South Africa. Now, the Western Cape is a region where white South Africans have been agitating. They want to split Western Cape from South Africa. They want to have a white-only homeland in Africa. As much as the white establishment, the white West, the conceptual West is powerful, having a white-only country in Africa, as of now, I do believe it's impossible. Yes, they could have some victories, but in the long term, we could see an agitated Africa begin to fight back, okay, and repealing, okay, reversing the whole white victory in Africa. So what I think South Africa needs to do is open its eyes, pay close attention to Israel and the United States, and be very careful. But also, South Africa and the rest of Africa needs to begin to collaborate so that they can share resources and use the little resources that they have to the benefit of Africa so that they do not have to depend on the United States and the rest of the West. This is because as long as they believe, okay, as long as they depend on the United States and the West, what Donald Trump did or is doing by cutting aid to Africa and the rest of the world is going to continue. And this is why I told my friend, as much as millions of people could die in Africa, as much as economy or economics could crumble in Africa, in the long term, it could be good for Africa because what happened if Donald Trump hadn't cut aid to the rest of the world or to Africa? That means the dependency of Africa to the United States or on the United States and the West persist. And in this case, we are going to forever be trapped, okay? Trapped in the confine, in the hands of the mighty West, led by the United States. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really want to know what you think. But my friends, I am going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, friends. But most especially and most importantly, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace, my friends. Peace.